Hello, I'm Bill O'Donnell, and welcome to another program on spirituality. I'm indeed thrilled to have as my friend and almost confessor, I almost said confessor, Mother Catarina Boyer, a Benedictine nun from Shaw Island, Washington. It's a pleasure to have you here. Welcome.
Thank
Mother
you, Bill.
Catarina.
It's really nice to be here.
I met Mother Catarina, I guess it was just a couple of years ago. She was giving a retreat at the monastery in Pecos, New Mexico, the Benedictine monastery in Pecos, for oblates. And it was my very first oblate retreat, just kind of sniffing that out, wondering what this was about, and it was a real blessing. So I'm glad you could come back and join us here.
Thank you.
For those who don't know you, please tell us about your background and how you got started as a nun.
As a nun. Well, I've been a nun for over 50 years, so most of my life has been in religious life. I grew up in a almost idyllic Catholic community. I think all of Jersey City, New Jersey, I'm sure you know that from my accent, was Catholic. And so there were 2,500 children in our school. We had 25 nuns. We had 6 priests in the rectory. It was very Irish. And so I can remember on St. Patrick's Day, the entire school body had to come to church. We were supposedly convinced that we were going to school. And Monsignor would have a very high solemn mass for St. Patrick, and at the end he would always say, "It's such a glorious day, I don't think we should have school." So that's the kind of world I lived in. And on Good Friday, Jersey City itself had all the buses free of charge for any children between the age of 6 and 12 who wanted to go and visit the churches during the 3 hours. And so I just grew up in that kind of atmosphere. I mean, everything was Catholic.
Boy, it sounds to me like, what was that old movie with Audrey Hepburn, or what was it, the Nun Story or something? Was that her? It was great, because those days are largely behind us.
Gone.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If you were describing that now, as you look back to it, it's almost like another life, I would assume. And yet, modernly, we see fewer nuns in habit, although it's starting to come back, isn't it, in different orders?
Well, I would think that the orders that are really making a call for vocations, like the Dominicans in Nashville, and there was just a program on Love of Life, or I saw it, but I can't remember the name, where almost all the nuns they interviewed were in habits, because, well, obviously, for me, the habit is extremely important. I live in a place, Shaw Island is very tiny. It's in the San Juan Islands above the state, above Seattle. But it's a very non-Catholic atmosphere. So people never refer to us as sister. They refer to us as ma'am. And that's, they don't know what we are. But I can't be anywhere, nor can my community, that someone doesn't come up and say, "My son's out of work, could you please pray?" I mean, I can be in Costco, and at least 3 people will stop me and say, "Could you say a prayer for me?" So to me, the witness of that in the world today is essential.
Yeah.
And our priest, Father Scott, who is with us for 2 years, he never goes off island without his collar. He doesn't wear his collar when he's on the tractor, because we have this huge farm, but he's very conscious of his place as priest. And I think today for priests that can be kind of hard, because a lot of people are prejudiced against the priesthood, when priests today, I think, are doing a marvelous job, and they have to affirm again the beauty of the priesthood and what a priest really stands for. And Father does that, and I think that's wonderful.
All right, for those who are not Catholic or don't know, as you said, people don't know that you're even a nun, tell the people out from your perspective as a nun, what is a priest?
Well, a priest is persona Christi, actually.
Which means?
The person of Christ. And so, I don't know if you see word, I don't want to give anybody credits, but Father Barron does Word on Fire. He has his own blog. And he's very, very good when he speaks about his own priesthood. And he says that to be a priest is to be a person that's dedicated to Christ, and when he offers any sacraments or the sacrifice of the Mass, he is not himself, but the person of Christ. And because he is, that sacrament gives us this wonderful grace. And sanctifying grace is what keeps us alive. It's like eating your Wheaties in the morning, but it's what fills our souls. And if we didn't have priests, we wouldn't have the Eucharist. If we didn't have the Eucharist, well, as St. Paul would said, what's the point? So, for me, priests are very important people.
Well, you've mentioned a few things that are all very important. It could be a show on each one of them, from the Eucharist and the soul. But let's go to the soul.
Okay.
Because we don't hear enough about the soul. And I was talking to someone at the monastery and retreat this weekend about it, and reminding them that that's what animates the body. I mean, people really don't even know who they are as a being. What is your perspective? What have you learned of who we are? Who are we as beings?
Well, if you go back to the Catechism, you know, we're made in the image and likeness of God. And we are the likeness of God insofar as we develop a personhood that imitates God. We're in the image of God because God created us as humans, and Jesus was human. When he came to earth, he took on a human body. So I'm not a theologian, and I really can't go there, but I know that we are all made in the image of God. But I think the likeness of God becomes more apparent as we get to know God, because how can you be like somebody if you don't know them? And so our soul is that part of us that lives forever, and that is it becomes more and more like the likeness of God. That's not my, well, that's,
I know, but I know you start off, you told me before that you would start off as an elementary teacher. And do you remember any of the highlights of that? How would you tell children today about these truths that you have learned?
Well, I haven't taught children in a long time, but I think part of our problem is that we don't really, I mean, the Catechism is just a little too hard for children, the Catechism of the Catholic Church. And I stopped teaching CCD a long time ago because I couldn't stand the fact that we were teaching children in the second grade about butterflies and, you know, crystallises and things rather than what the Eucharist was. And so in my childhood, and if I was teaching children today, which I am not, I would really want to emphasize that even if you're 7 years old, Pius X said that you were ready to receive the sacraments. Therefore, you should certainly know the difference between good and bad. You know when you're good and you know when you're bad, so that you are able to go to confession. I support Pope Francis anyhow, but I do support him in the fact that he really, really is encouraging people to the sacrament of reconciliation. You know, I think it was Jung that said, if people went to confession, we wouldn't need psychologists. And I think that's very true, because we do not take advantage of the sacrament or what the sacrament can give to us in terms not only of grace, but in relieving us of guilt. And the world is so full of guilt right now that it's really very sad. So many people are depressed, but we don't take advantage of the things that Christ gave us, which would help that.
It's so true. I had the Archbishop on, and Archbishop Sheehan, and he started talking about, he'd been out confirming a lot of children, and this is one of the 7 sacraments. And after baptism, then they start to fall in line, and the sacrament of reconciliation is often the next one, or confession. And I said, Archbishop, I would be remiss if I didn't talk about one of my favorite sacraments, sacrament of reconciliation. I said, when I go, it feels like I've taken a spiritual shower, and I feel that cleansed and lightened. And then when I receive the Eucharist, that I feel even more light. And I want this on my electronic tombstone when he says, well, I couldn't agree with you more, you know. But that's our experience. And I think we often don't tell non-Catholics or former Catholics really what they're missing, because the benefit package, I see it, if you were out to searching for a church, you couldn't beat ours that I know of. I haven't done a lot of experimenting in the Protestant realm, but in other non-Christian religions, they always have something to offer. But I think ours is really second to none in that ability to go to confession and to let go of any and all anxiety. When you walk out, you won't be taking anything with you. And then when you receive the Eucharist, you mention that. Tell the folks at home what the Eucharist is.
Oh, right, yeah. In 10 words or less?
Well, just...
Well, obviously the Eucharist is the body and blood of Christ. We believe that completely and totally. And to me, you know, if we eat food, the food becomes part of us. If we receive communion, we become part of Christ. And therefore, you know, he fills us with his love and his sacramental grace. I can't go back enough to the fact that grace is what keeps us going. And I think in the Catholic Church that we don't really press the sacraments enough, because it's the sacraments that Christ gave us at the Last Supper and on his time on earth, and it's the sacraments that fill us and that give us life. And the greatest sacrament we have is the sacrament of the Eucharist. I mean, because I'm just a sinner, like Pope Francis says, we're all sinners. I started to go to church when I was in the 2nd grade every day, and I don't think I missed many days. And I know the day of my first Holy Communion. I know the date, and I still celebrate it because it's that important to me. And I would wish it would be that important to everybody, because, Christ comes to you. How intimate can that be?
Well, that's the next question. As a nun, we've heard that phrase, when you take your vows, you become a bride of Christ. Could you describe that for us?
Well, the church is the bride of Christ. So we're part of that mystical body. But consecrated life, which is religious life, does try to separate you from the world insofar as your focus is the spiritual life and prayer. We live in an enclosed community. We are nuns, not sisters, because with sisters, active religious, they go out into the world to do their work. Like Mother Teresa's group, you can't beat them. But our job is to be in the chapel and praying. We pray the office every day. We say all 7 offices of the divine office, which I can't go into now, but so our job is to pray for the world. And therefore, we're in the presence of Christ a great deal. I can't really explain being a bride of Christ. Sometimes I feel like a housewife rather than a bride, but you know that you're always there, and I never take my ring off. And inside that it says that, you are the spouse of Christ. And I hope I'll know more about that if I get to heaven.
Okay. Just for those men listening, how would you describe men in relationship to Christ?
I had a wonderful teacher, a man I really loved, called Rick Toretto, who died not long ago. But anyhow, sorry. But Rick always had a problem with that. He'd say, I love Jesus Christ. I am espoused to him, and I'm a man. And how does that work? And I don't know, but I think that Christ loved the apostles and the apostles loved him, and there are many very deep relationships, beautiful relationships between God and man. Look at the Holy Father again, how much he loves Christ. In heaven there is no male or female, so it's all going to work out. Don't ask me theological questions, Bill.
Well, I want to know these. For those of you who are watching this at home, either on television or on the internet, we hope that you'll stop it at any time and go and look up some of these concepts that Mother has shared with you, because particularly if you've either not in the church or you've been away for a long time, there's so much to learn. That's why I brought these books that I recommend reading, and I'm sure she does too. Here's the Holy Bible, the New American, which is used quite extensively in this country today. Since it first came out, I think in the early 70s, they revised it in '84. And this is the catechism. This is for adults now. When we were kids, it was the
St.
Baltimore
Joseph.
Catechism or something, and it's really good reading. I heard myself, Pat Robertson of 700 Club fame, say about this book, he says this was a very good book and a worthwhile for all Christians to read. So it really has the essence of the faith. Between these 2 books, you read these 2 books and you will be informed and up to date, and then they're designed to help you do what? Closer to God, right?
Right.
Yeah. What else can you tell us about your community in Washington? What is their charism? What do they do there?
Well, our charism is prayer, definitely, especially living in such a really a pagan area. I don't mean to offend the people of Washington, but it's not a lot of church going in the area, so our focus is prayer. We also happen to have a large farm, and you can look at our website, but we have llamas and alpacas and sheep and chickens, and we milk our own cows. We have Scottish Highland and Jersey cows. And so we really believe in, the Benedictine motto is ora et labora. And so we pray, ora, and we labora. We do physical work. We feel that that's important. It's part of the rule, and it's a part of the rule that we really hold to. So we work on the
Good.
farm.
What's the name of your monastery?
Our monastery is named Our Lady of the Rock because we live on a volcanic rock. And so our abbess, Lady Abbess thus decided to name it Our Lady of the Rock because that's where we live.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, why are you called mother and not sister?
That's, again, a very difficult
Okay.
question. In the hierarchy of the church, just like in the hierarchy of the English, in England I would be called Dame. In Italy, when I lived in Rome, I was called Donna. It's not me, it's that we are called moniales. So active religious are sister, unless you're a superior, but it's a rank. Because we're contemplative religious, we go up a rank, and therefore moniales have the title of mother, whatever that is in whatever country you are. And we have kept that. We have kept that title because we feel that, especially where we are, it's important for people to know that we're loving and caring, and we try to be motherly to our guests. You know, the rule of St. Benedict, the first thing is you must have a guest house. You must, the guest is Christ, and therefore we try very hard to be motherly to guests. And so it's just a title, but
Yeah.
it's there from the church, not from us.
I understand. How did this monastery get started?
Well, our original monastery, our original foundation is in Bethlehem, Connecticut. And our abbess, our founding abbess, was an American who was trained in France and came back to the United States because of her experience of World War II. And at some point in the 1970s, a gentleman named Henry Ellis offered us his property because he wasn't married. He was an oblate of St. Angel, Mount St. Angel, and he wanted a community to come and use his property to pray for him and his family. He had one stipulation, which was they had to do Gregorian chant. And that kind of narrowed the field because there weren't too many American communities doing Gregorian chant, and we were one of them. And so Lady Abbess took up his offer, and we've been there for 36 years.
All right. You mentioned the term oblate, which you and I know to be a third order or an extended member of your community. Tell us about that program, or how other people who are not members of the immediate community can be a member in a sense and supportive of you.
Well, Pecos has a very large oblate group, and I have been involved with them, which is really wonderful. But in our community, we also have oblates. There are people that we don't advertise for oblates, but they find their way to a certain monastery. So that when you become an oblate, you are an oblate of a place. So you could be an oblate of Our Lady of Guadalupe. The people that come to us are oblates of Our Lady of the Rock. They support us as they can. They might come for a week and work. They are supposed to make sure that they pray every day, at least part of the office. They can support us financially if that's possible. They may come and take over the guest house for 2 weeks so that we can do other things and not have to deal with, cooking and working with the guests. So the oblates have a way of connecting to us in a very deep spiritual way, and they make promises to God that they will fulfill the rule of St. Benedict for us. If they were Dominican tertiaries, then they'd have to worry about the Dominican rule. But for us, they have to read the rule, they have to understand how they can live it, and then they have to relate however they can, the best that they can.
What's the benefit for those who are at home who don't have a religious life or a spiritual life? What is the benefit to going to a monastery, say for instance on a retreat?
I think you'd have to ask any person that ever did that, but there are days when you live there every day and you're tired, and the calf came in the middle of the night and everybody was up and you just want to give up, and then somebody turns to you who's a guest and says, "This has been the most wonderful experience I've ever had, to be here, the peace, the beauty," and you think, "Oh my goodness." But I think for anyone to come into a monastery and to meet God on that level, it's individual. God meets you as an individual, and if you're willing to open yourself to going to a monastery and being met by him, whatever happens for that person is personal. It's an individual experience. I mean, we just had a boy for 3 months, Jewish, jazz pianist. He just graduated from college, and he came. And when he was saying goodbye to us after the 3 months, he had such a fabulous time. And he said, you know, I didn't even know if I'd have a bed. I couldn't believe I was going to a monastery, but what you've given me, I will take with me for the rest of my life. Well, what he gave to us, you know, working, throwing hay, doing hay bales, it goes both ways. But we hope people always leave any monastery richer than they came.
Because it's been my experience to go on a retreat, just getting away from home, getting out of your normal lifestyle and going and being in a spiritually charged environment, because you are receiving the Eucharist every day, and it's there in your tabernacle, in your chapel, and there is that feeling closer to God. And there are, yeah.
But remember, many people that come to us are not Catholic.
Right.
Many Protestants, and he is Jewish, come because a monastery is just bigger than just a church. It's just a whole experience, and you don't have to be Catholic to come and experience God's love.
And you reminded me the other day of Dolores Hart, the famous actress that there's a new documentary out, what is it, Bigger Than Elvis, I think it's called, The Call to Be Closer to God. Could you give them an insider's view of what that means to you, to see that?
Well, I see her, so I don't have to see it. Mother Dolores is a member of our community in Bethlehem, and I have known her for many years. And I give her all the credit in the world, because Mother Dolores has a serious illness, and yet, you know, she just keeps going. She's gone and done book signings, and she went to Hollywood to walk on the red carpet when the documentary was up for an Academy Award. And she's a delightful woman. She pours herself out for the community. And, you know, she is an actress, and therefore there's always a little more of her than you know. It's fun living with an actress.
Okay, for those who don't know her, I mean, she was on screen with Elvis.
She was the first actress kissed by Elvis on screen.
Yeah.
She also was with Stephen Boyd, and she was with Peter Sellers. She's done many movies. But she left Hollywood and entered the Abbey many years ago. And she's the prioress of our Abbey right now. But she really pours herself out for her. And, you know, of course, in my time there, I haven't been back to the Abbey. I mean, I haven't lived at the Abbey for 15 years, but people from New York City that were in plays and would come. I mean, Maria Cooper is her best friend, and Byron Janis, and Anthony Quinn, and Lois Nettleton, and I can't even think of people that just come to see her. When they're burning out or something, she's right there, and she knows what they're going through, and she's happy to help them. And yet she's 100% nun.
But she still votes in the Screen
Yes,
Actors
she
Guild.
does.
I like that.
Yes, she does.
It's a fabulous documentary if you get a chance to see it. But that gives you another insider's view of your community, well, at that particular monastery,
Right.
different from here. What else can we tell them in the few minutes that we have left about? To me, I don't think we talk enough about the benefits. You were talking about the sacraments are clearly the benefits of practicing the faith. And what I like to remind people, we now in this country have, in effect, freedom of religion. That throughout history, that's been a rare commodity, a rare environment. And we have that. And yet I don't know if people are taking advantage of it. But for those who are, I mean, the banquet is set. And for those of you, you're all welcome, you're all invited. And you just have to seek, knock, and ask, and it'll just open for you. Isn't that true?
That's very true. Yes, and I think Pope Francis is making that more and more open. You know, his whole thing right from the beginning was, if you're Christian, then you should be joyful. You know, you have no reason not to be joyful. And I think that's a great antidote to the world today. You know, if we believe that Christ came to give us eternal life, and that he is here for us, and that he rose from the dead for us, then why not be joyful? And I don't like to see sad nuns or sad people.
I understand. And I would add that if you've got a better story, I'd like to hear it. I mean, even if it's a myth in your mind, it's still the best story out there that's why they call it the greatest story ever told. And here's the bestseller of all time in the Western world. And if you don't read this for yourself, you're going to miss something. At least read the Gospels. I think you'll be impressed by. You can't help it. When I'm what Marcus calls, what's his name, on EWTN calls revert. I was away from the church for a time,
right.
and I was searching in other fields, and I never met a Hindu guru that didn't really respect and admired Jesus and his teachings and the rest of it. And we've heard the Dalai Lama talk on him today and the rest of it. So it's really up to you. But you have 3 conditions preceding. You've got to seek before you're going to find anything. You got to knock on that door before it's going to open, and you've got to ask before you're going to get those answers. So you have to do that much. You can't just sit back and assume God's going to do everything. He's given you free will, and I'm glad that you took your free will to come and share with us. In the few minutes we have left, just what else would you like to say to the people at home and encourage them in their spiritual life?
Well, I think you're right. You have to ask. We have free will. And if you're really seeking a spiritual life, you just have to ask God to direct you in the way that's best for you. We have friends that are very close to our monastery, and she was a fallen away Catholic. He was Jewish, New York Jew. And they were getting married, and he said, we have to find one religion we can both live with because our children have to grow up with something. And so he works for Boeing. He's a genius. And he went and studied, and she was not caring. And then they were getting ready to get married, and she was dying because she thought, I know I haven't gone to church, but I cannot accept a life without the Eucharist. And so she met him for dinner, and she said, how can I tell him this? Because, we're going to have to break off her engagement. She sat down and she said, Mike, I have something to tell you. And he says to her, Patty, I have something to tell you. I've studied every religion in the book. We're Catholic or we're nothing. And for me, that's great, because he studied it, and that's what they came up with. They have 6 beautiful children, and they are very devout Catholics. What else can I say?
I'd say that's pretty good. So we want to hope that some of this has been of value to you. Mother stated that her website will be for her monastery, and her organization will be on the credits. But remember, the Monastery on the Rock, you probably could Google that up and you'd probably get to their website, and I encourage you to do so. And if you want to contact her, her address and mailing address will be there for you, and I'm sure you'd be happy to hear from anyone who might want to talk to you or find out more about religious life. And I think you're a great representative for the Benedictine orders. We don't see too many Benedictine nuns in habit anymore, and so I'm glad you came out to share with us in this time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Bill.
And we want to thank Father Aidan, the superior of the Our Lady of Guadalupe Abbey at the Benedictine Monastery in Pecos, who made this possible for you to be here for this retreat and to come and share with you on Spirituality TV. So on behalf of everyone here, on behalf of Mother, myself, our director, Marshall, our programmer, George, our camera people, Father Hampton and Alex, and our assistant producer over here, Alana Carr, who's here, we want to thank you for viewing, and stay tuned next week at this time for another program on spirituality.